I was standing in the doorway of my corner office when Anna first caught my eye. She had this way of walking, confident but with a hint of vulnerability, that made me pause midway through my morning coffee. Her dark hair was pulled back in a severe bun that somehow only accentuated the softness of her face. The contrast was striking. "Mr. Walter," my assistant called from behind me, "your 9 o'clock is waiting in the conference room." "Who's the new face?" I asked, nodding toward the young woman now settling at a desk in the open office area. "Anna Petrova. Started yesterday in recruitment. Provincial girl, apparently. Graduated top of her class from—" "I'll handle the introduction myself," I said, cutting her off. Something about this Anna intrigued me. I watched her for several days before making my move. She worked later than anyone else, her desk lamp a solitary beacon in the darkened office. Her determination was palpable. I could practically smell the desperation beneath her department store perfume. The opportunity presented itself naturally. Walking past her desk at 9 in the evening, I paused. "You're Anna, correct? The new recruit." She looked up, surprise flashing across her face before being replaced by a practiced smile. "Yes, sir." "Anna Petrova. Working late again? Third night this week, isn't it?" "There's so much to learn," she replied, gesturing to the stack of applicant files. "I want to make a good impression." "Walk with me," I said, not a request. "I'm heading to the executive lounge. We should discuss your aspirations." The executive lounge was deserted at this hour, dimly lit with the city skyline twinkling beyond floor-to-ceiling windows. I poured 2 glasses of scotch without asking if she wanted one. "Tell me about yourself, Anna." Not the rehearsed interview version. The truth. Her hesitation was brief but noticeable. "I'm from Murnarat. Small town, you've probably never heard of it." She took a small sip of the scotch, wincing slightly. "Middle-class family. Father works in administration, mother teaches primary school. I'm the first to attend university in my family. And now you're here, in the capital, working for one of the most prestigious recruiting agencies in the country." I moved closer, watching her reaction. "Yet something tells me you're not entirely satisfied." Her eyes darted to mine, then away. "I'm grateful for the opportunity, but you expected more," I finished for her. "A corner office perhaps? Lead recruiter position? The path to success in this business isn't what they teach you in university." I could see she was calculating, weighing her options. Good. Intelligence was attractive. "I've seen your application file, Anna. Impressive credentials but no connections. No experience. Do you know how many applications like yours we receive weekly?" She straightened her spine. "I'm willing to work harder than anyone else." "Hard work," I laughed, the sound harsh even to my ears. "That's adorable. This industry isn't about hard work. It's about relationships, influence, leverage." I moved closer, my knee almost touching hers as I leaned in. "I could help you, Anna. Fast-track your career path. But I don't offer this to just anyone." Her breathing changed, nearly imperceptible. "What would that involve exactly?" I smiled, enjoying the moment when they understand the proposition without it being explicitly stated. "Let's just say I expect certain accommodations in return for my patronage. Nothing complicated. Dinner at my penthouse this weekend. We can discuss the details there." The internal battle played out across her face, ambition wrestling with dignity. I'd seen it before. I sipped my scotch and waited. "I should get back to those files," she finally said, standing. Not a yes, but notably not a no either. "Of course." I handed her a business card with my personal number scrawled on the back. "When you're ready to have a serious conversation about your future here, call me." 3 days later, my phone rang just after midnight. Within a month, Anna had her own office. Within 3, she was heading a small team. I watched with a mixture of pride and amusement as she developed her own system of manipulation, far more sophisticated than my crude propositions. She was a natural, using her provincial charm to disarm clients before moving in for the kill. I'd created a monster in the best possible way. And for nearly a year, our arrangement continued to our mutual benefit. Until she met Daniel. But that's where the real story begins. The screech of metal against metal was deafening. One moment I was rushing to meet a potential client, mentally rehearsing my pitch, and the next I was sitting dazed in my crumpled BMW, airbag dust floating around me like snow. Blood trickled from a small cut on my forehead, and my right wrist throbbed painfully. "Hey, are you all right in there?" A deep voice penetrated my shock. I blinked, trying to focus on the man peering through my shattered driver's window. Tall, broad-shouldered, with the kind of face that looked sculpted rather than grown, sharp jawline softened only by concerned eyes. Military haircut but growing out. Ex-service, I guessed automatically. Recruitment instincts die hard, even in emergencies. I'm fine, I managed, though the shakiness in my voice betrayed me. Just a bit rattled. Doors jammed. Hang tight, he instructed, disappearing momentarily before returning with a tire iron. With practiced efficiency, he leveraged the tool against the frame, creating just enough space to pull the door open. Easy now. Could be a concussion. Don't move too quickly. His hands were calloused but gentle as he helped me out. Engineer's hands, precise and purposeful. The recruitment part of my brain was already filing away details while the human part struggled to remain upright. I'm Daniel, he said, supporting my weight as my legs threatened to buckle. Daniel Hayes. I've called an ambulance, but we should move away from the vehicle. Gas leak. Only then did I notice the smell. My expensive leather portfolio with the Callaway proposal, the one that would have cemented my promotion, lay forgotten on the passenger seat as Daniel guided me to the sidewalk. Anna, I replied, finding my voice. Anna Petrova. Thank you for all this. Daniel's smile transformed his serious face. Former military engineer. Vehicle extractions were part of the job description. An ambulance arrived, followed by police. Through the chaos of statements and examinations, Daniel remained, a calm presence in a whirlwind. He declined to leave when the paramedic suggested he could go, instead handing me a bottle of water and sitting beside me on the curb. Wrist is sprained, not broken, I told him, returning from the ambulance with a bandage. No concussion either, apparently I have a hard head. Lucky, he said with that same transformative smile. Though your car wasn't so fortunate. I looked at my mangled BMW and thought about the missed meeting. My phone had shattered in the crash. Walter would be furious. Not lucky enough, I muttered. Need a ride somewhere? Daniel offered, gesturing to a modest sedan parked legally down the street. This was the moment where my training would normally kick in. Identify the target's value, assess vulnerability, implement charm offensive. Daniel's engineering background alone made him a prime recruitment prospect. His military experience added another layer of desirability. The practiced smile, the casual touch on the arm, the hint of vulnerability, these were tools I'd perfected. I opened my mouth to launch into my standard approach when something stopped me. Maybe it was the concussion the paramedic insisted I didn't have. Maybe it was the genuine concern in his eyes, so different from the calculating looks I'd grown accustomed to in the corporate world. Actually, I said, surprising myself, I could use a coffee. And a phone to call my office. Over bitter diner coffee, I learned that Daniel had left the military 3 years ago, now working for a private engineering firm specializing in infrastructure security. He spoke with passion about bridge stabilization techniques that I couldn't begin to understand, but found myself genuinely interested in anyway. When he drove me to my office 2 hours later, I hadn't once employed my usual tactics. No flirtatious touches. No manufactured intimacy. Just conversation. I'd like to see you again, he said as we pulled up to my building. Under less dramatic circumstances, preferably. I hesitated, pen poised over the business card I was about to hand him. My standard move would be to write my personal number, suggest dinner at his place. But instead, I simply wrote my name and office extension. I'd like that, I replied honestly. Walter was waiting when I walked in, face thunderous. You missed Callaway. Complete disaster. He's considering our competitors now. I'll fix it, I promised, already formulating a strategy to win back the account. You'd better, Walter hissed, eyes dropping to my bandaged wrist. And don't think injuries earn you time off. Results, Anna. I expect results. As he walked away, my phone pinged with a message from an unknown number. Hope the wrist feels better. Dinner tomorrow? Daniel. For the first time in years, I recruited a valuable prospect without offering anything but myself in return. More surprisingly, I found myself looking forward to seeing him again, for reasons that had nothing to do with business. We sat on Daniel's balcony, city lights twinkling below us like fallen stars. 3 months into our relationship, and I still couldn't believe how easy it was with him. No games, no calculations, just two people genuinely enjoying each other's company. It terrified me. Penny for your thoughts? Daniel asked, refilling my wine glass. Just thinking about how different you are, I answered truthfully. He laughed. Different good or different strange? Different authentic, I said, surprising myself with my candor. The wine perhaps. Daniel's expression shifted, eyes darkening slightly. He set down his glass and stared out at the skyline. Authentic hasn't always served me well. Something in his tone made me set my own glass down. What do you mean? He was quiet for so long I thought he might not answer. When he finally spoke, his voice carried the weight of old pain. 2 years ago, I trusted two people more than anyone in the world. My best friend since childhood, Evan, and my younger sister, Maya. He traced the rim of his glass with his finger. I found out they'd been seeing each other behind my back for months, planning a future together while looking me in the eye every day. That's terrible, I said, feeling a familiar twist of guilt in my stomach. The betrayal wasn't even that they fell in love. I could have accepted that eventually. It was the deception. The lying to my face. His knuckles whitened around the stem of his glass. My sister got married 6 months ago. I wasn't invited. Haven't spoken to either of them since I found out. I reached for his hand, my touch gentle. I'm sorry. I promised myself I wouldn't trust that easily again. Then I met you. His smile returned, but his eyes remained shadowed. Something about you felt different from the start. Trustworthy, despite that corporate shark exterior. The irony wasn't lost on me. While my relationship with Daniel flourished on honesty, my professional life continued as before. Just yesterday, I'd secured a major client using the same techniques that had become second nature. The lingering touch, the intimate dinner, the strategic vulnerability that made powerful men feel like protectors instead of prey. Every successful recruitment fed my guilt, yet I couldn't stop. The praise from Walter, the bonuses, the growing respect in the office, they were addictive. I justified it by compartmentalizing. What happened in business stayed in business. My relationship with Daniel was separate, pure. Until worlds collided. Anna? Daniel's voice cut through the crowded restaurant. I froze, champagne flute halfway to my lips as he approached our table. My client, James Thornton, CFO of a tech startup we desperately wanted to sign, had his hand resting intimately on my knee under the tablecloth. Daniel, what are you doing here? I stood quickly, forcing James's hand away. My mind raced for explanations. Meeting a colleague, Daniel said, eyes flickering between me and James. You must be working late. Recruitment dinner? I could see the confusion in his eyes, the beginning of suspicion. James, oblivious to the tension, extended his hand. James Thornton. Anna's been telling me wonderful things about your firm's approach to talent acquisition. Very personal touch. I interjected before James could say more. James is considering our executive search services for his tech startup. Daniel, my boyfriend, I added for James's benefit, watching his expression shift from predatory to professional in an instant. Lovely to meet you, Daniel said, his tone neutral yet somehow not. Don't let me interrupt your business meeting. I'll see you at home later, Anna. The way he emphasized business meeting told me everything. As he walked away, I knew I'd have explaining to do. That night, I constructed an elaborate lie about James being an important client with old-fashioned views on female executives. I have to play along sometimes, I explained. It's just part of the job. Daniel accepted my explanation, but something had changed. A small crack had formed in our foundation. 2 weeks later, I sat alone in a clinic waiting room, staring at a positive pregnancy test result. 6 weeks along, the doctor had confirmed. Right when I was being considered for department head. The timing couldn't have been worse. Daniel wanted a family someday, he'd mentioned it often enough. But now, with my career at a crucial turning point? Walter would never approve my promotion if he knew I'd be taking maternity leave within the year. As I filled out the paperwork for the procedure scheduled for the following week, I told myself Daniel never needed to know. Another secret, another compartment. For the greater good of our future together. The receptionist handed me a copy of my forms. Make sure someone can drive you home afterward, Miss Petrova. I nodded, slipping the papers into my purse beside the sonogram I couldn't bring myself to look at. The crack in our foundation grew wider, though Daniel wouldn't discover it for months to come. The email from the executive board arrived on a Monday morning. Effective immediately, Anna Petrova will head the newly formed Strategic Talent Acquisition Division. After 3 years of calculated moves and careful relationship building, I finally had my own department. My phone buzzed with a message from Daniel. Congratulations, superstar. Dinner at Marcel's tonight to celebrate? I smiled, typing back a quick affirmative. 6 months had passed since the abortion, and our relationship had strengthened, the secret buried deep beneath professional triumphs and domestic bliss. Daniel had moved into my apartment, and talks of engagement floated between us during quiet moments. Miss Petrova? My assistant knocked lightly on my new office door. HR sent over the candidate files for your team positions. I spent the day reviewing applications, setting aside promising prospects. My team would need to be exceptional, hungry, intelligent, and willing to operate in ethical gray areas without asking uncomfortable questions. By late afternoon, I had scheduled 8 interviews for the following day. The first 7 candidates were qualified but uninspiring. Then Samuel Kingston walked in. "Call me Sam," he said, his handshake firm but not domineering. "I've been following your career trajectory since you landed the Meridian account. Impressive work." There was something magnetic about Sam, confidence without arrogance, ambition tempered with charm. His resume showed an impressive track record at 3 prestigious firms, though oddly none provided references. "Your work history is stellar," I noted, tapping his file. "Yet I don't see any recommendations from previous employers." A shadow crossed his face. "Creative differences. I prefer not to leave on bad terms." 3 consecutive positions with creative differences? I raised an eyebrow. "I have high standards," he replied, leaning forward. "And I recognize the same in you. The industry talks, Miss Petrova. Your methods get results." The way he emphasized methods made my stomach tighten. How much did he know? The HR director knocked and entered without waiting. "Anna, a word? Outside, please." In the hallway she kept her voice low. "Kingston has red flags all over his employment record. No references, confidential settlements with 2 previous employers, rumors of ethical violations." "Specifics?" I asked. "Sealed by NDAs. But the pattern suggests problems." I glanced back through the glass wall at Sam, who sat calmly reviewing his notes. "He's exactly what this department needs." "Your call," she said, disapproval evident. "But document everything. If he causes problems, I need a paper trail showing I warned you." I returned to find Sam studying the framed photo on my desk. "Daniel and me hiking last summer." "Your husband?" he asked. "Boyfriend," I corrected. "Lucky man," Sam said, setting the frame down carefully. "When can I start?" Against HR's advice, I hired Sam that day. Within weeks, my instincts were vindicated. He intuitively understood my recruitment strategies, even suggesting refinements that increased our success rate. We developed an efficient shorthand, able to communicate complex ideas with just a glance or nod. One evening, as we celebrated landing a particularly difficult client, Daniel unexpectedly stopped by the office with takeout. "Thought you might be hungry," he said, kissing my cheek before nodding to Sam. "You must be the new superstar Anna's been talking about." They shook hands, exchanging pleasantries while I packed up my things. As I reached for my bag, a file slipped out, scattering papers across the floor. Daniel bent to help gather them, picking up a hospital form I'd forgotten was in the folder. His face changed as he read it. "Women's Health Clinic, procedure confirmation. 6 months ago?" The blood drained from my face. Sam, sensing tension, muttered an excuse about a phone call and stepped out. "This is dated when you said you had that conference in Chicago," Daniel said, his voice eerily calm. "You were pregnant?" "Daniel, I can explain." "Were you pregnant with my child?" His voice cracked on the last word. The truth was written on my face. He nodded slowly, placing the form carefully on my desk. "I need some time," he said, turning toward the door. "Daniel, please? Don't come home tonight." For 2 agonizing weeks, Daniel wouldn't take my calls. I stayed in hotels, leaving desperate voicemails that went unreturned. When he finally agreed to meet, it was at a neutral coffee shop. "I've been thinking about trust," he said, not touching his coffee. "About what it means to build a life with someone." I waited, heart hammering. "I understand why you felt you couldn't tell me. I don't agree with it, but I understand." He looked up, eyes red-rimmed. "I want to forgive you, Anna. I love you. But from now on, complete honesty. No more secrets." "No more secrets," I echoed, relief flooding through me. "I promise." As we walked home hand in hand, Daniel squeezed my fingers. "I've been thinking, maybe we should make things official. Get engaged." I smiled up at him, pushing away thoughts of Sam, of Walter, of all the secrets I still kept. "I'd like that." The sunset painted the beach in gold and crimson as Daniel lowered himself to one knee. We'd been in Bali for 5 days, a surprise getaway he'd planned with meticulous attention to detail. I should have suspected something when he insisted I pack my favorite dress. "Anna Petrova," he began, voice steady despite the tremor in his hands, "you've changed my life in ways I never thought possible. Will you marry me?" The ring caught the dying light, platinum band, emerald-cut diamond. Elegant, understated, perfectly me. Just like Daniel to notice my preferences without me ever having to say them aloud. Yes, I whispered, tears blurring my vision. Genuine tears. The realization shocked me almost as much as the proposal. Later that night, as Daniel slept beside me, I stared at the ceiling fan spinning lazily above us. I loved him, truly deeply loved him. Yet a small voice whispered that I didn't deserve this happiness, this good man who believed in my fictitious integrity. The message from Walter was waiting when we returned, corporate merger negotiations accelerating. All hands on deck. Crucial recruitment targets identified. Special incentives authorized. In Walter speak, this meant one thing: whatever it takes, get the talent. I hate that you have to go back to 60-hour weeks right after our engagement, Daniel said, kissing me goodbye at the airport. I'll miss you. It's just for 2 weeks, I promised, twisting my new ring. Then things should calm down. Conveniently while I'm at the engineering conference in Munich, he teased. Try not to have too much fun without me. The office hummed with nervous energy when I arrived. 2 major financial institutions merging meant restructuring, which meant identifying which executives were worth poaching and which could be left to sink. My department had been tasked with securing the top-tier talents before our competitors could approach them. Sam and I can handle the CFO candidates, I told Walter during the strategy meeting. We've developed an effective approach for financial executives. Walter's knowing smirk made my skin crawl, but I maintained my professional smile. He'd been less hands-on since I'd proven my methods worked, but he never missed an opportunity to remind me where I'd learned them. Days blurred into nights. The pressure mounted as deadline after deadline approached. Sam became my right hand, anticipating needs, fielding calls at midnight, bringing fresh coffee at 6 a.m. We developed a rhythm that felt almost telepathic. You should go home, Sam said one night as we reviewed potential candidates. It's past 11. So should you, I replied, rubbing my eyes. No one waiting for me, he said, glancing at my engagement ring. Unlike some people. I sighed, leaning back in my chair. Daniel's at a conference. The apartment feels too empty anyway. Sam's gaze lingered a beat too long. Another coffee? It became our ritual, working until the cleaning crew had come and gone, sharing takeout over spreadsheets, talking strategy until dawn threatened the horizon. Without planning to, I found myself sharing personal details. My provincial hometown, the struggle to establish myself, the compromises made. One night, after particularly good news about securing a key executive, Sam opened up in return. My father was the town drunk, he said, spinning his empty whiskey glass between his fingers. Charming man when sober, which wasn't often. He'd disappear for days, then return with gifts and apologies my mother always accepted. I watched him carefully. That must have been difficult. The worst part wasn't the drinking. It was catching him with other women. 3 times before I was 15. His knuckles whitened around the glass. My mother forgave him every time. I never could. Is that why you don't trust easily? I asked, recognizing a familiar pattern. I don't trust cheaters, he corrected, his gaze intense. Infidelity is cowardice dressed as impulse. I've never understood how people justify betraying someone who trusts them. The irony of his moral stance given our professional methods wasn't lost on me. But something in his conviction made me uncomfortable, perhaps because it mirrored Daniel's in its absolutism. It's getting late, I said, gathering my papers. Anna. Sam caught my wrist as I stood. The touch sent an unexpected current through me. You understand me, don't you? We're the same. I should have pulled away. Instead, I stood frozen as he moved closer, his free hand tracing my cheek with surprising gentleness. Tell me you haven't thought about it, he whispered, close enough that I could feel his breath on my lips. I had thought about it, that was the terrible truth. In late-night strategy sessions, in stolen glances over conference tables, in the electric charge when our hands brushed passing documents. I'm engaged, I said weakly. And I'm not asking for forever, Sam replied, closing the last inch between us. The kiss was nothing like Daniel's careful tenderness. It carried hunger, ambition, recognition of something darker we shared. As I finally pushed him away, I knew with sick certainty that this wouldn't be the last time. My phone buzzed with a text from Daniel, missing you terribly. Can't wait to start planning our future together when I'm home. I turned my phone face down without replying. Daniel's return from Munich brought a renewed intensity to our relationship. He clutched me like a drowning man finding shore, whispering plans for our future between kisses. I missed you every second, he murmured against my neck, his hands tracing familiar paths with new urgency. 2 weeks felt like eternity. I buried my face in his shoulder, inhaling his scent, sandalwood soap and airplane recycled air, trying to recapture the certainty I'd felt on that beach in Bali. His touch should have erased all memory of Sam's kiss, but instead I found myself making involuntary comparisons. "I've been thinking about venues," Daniel said over breakfast the next morning, sliding a folder across the table. "My parents suggested their country club, but that feels too stuffy for us." I flipped through the brochures, noting his careful annotations. While I'd been tangled in corporate machinations and inappropriate desires, he'd been planning our wedding. Guilt coiled in my stomach. "Maybe we should consider a destination wedding," I suggested, buying time. "Something small, intimate." Daniel beamed. "I was hoping you'd say that. I've already researched options in Santorini." His thoughtfulness only deepened my shame. The engagement ring felt suddenly heavy, conspicuous on my finger as I headed to the office. Sam maintained perfect professional distance when others were present. No one would have guessed what had transpired between us. Yet I caught his knowing glances during meetings, felt the deliberate brush of his fingers when passing documents. Two worlds perfectly compartmentalized. Devoted fiancé at home, playing house and discussing flower arrangements. Something else entirely behind closed office doors, where Sam and I danced around the inevitable with diminishing restraint. The corporate merger proceeded at breakneck pace. Walter called me into his office, satisfaction evident in his shark-like smile. "The board is impressed with your department's performance." "Very impressed." He slid a performance report across his desk. "Particularly your work with the Henderson Group executives." I scanned the figures, pride mingling with discomfort. The Henderson acquisition had required especially aggressive tactics from Sam and me. The memory of how we'd celebrated that particular success, champagne in his office after hours, his hand sliding up my thigh, flashed unbidden. "Thank you, sir." "Don't thank me yet." Walter leaned forward. "The annual Black and White Gala is next Friday. Key stakeholders will be there, including the board. Bring your fiancé, make a good impression. Your next promotion might come sooner than you think." Daniel was delighted at the invitation. "Finally, a chance to see this mysterious world you work in," he joked, adjusting his bow tie as we prepared for the gala. He looked striking in his tuxedo, handsome in that wholesome, unpretentious way that had first attracted me. For a moment I remembered why I'd fallen for him, why I'd said yes on that beach. "You're staring," he said, smiling. "Just thinking how lucky I am," I replied, the truth of the statement surprising me despite everything. The ballroom glittered with crystal chandeliers and the jewelry of corporate wives. I introduced Daniel to colleagues, carefully steering him away from anyone who might reference our more questionable recruitment methods. He charmed everyone, his genuine interest in their lives a refreshing contrast to the calculated networking around us. "Your fiancé is delightful," Walter commented, appearing at my elbow. Refreshingly honest. The emphasis wasn't lost on me. Before I could respond, Sam approached, champagne flutes in hand. "Anna thought you might need a refill," he said, his smile professional but his eyes conveying much more. "And you must be Daniel. I've heard so much about you." I held my breath through their handshake, searching for any sign Sam might reveal something inappropriate. But he was flawlessly cordial, asking intelligent questions about Daniel's engineering projects. As the evening progressed, the facade became increasingly difficult to maintain. Sam's hand at the small of my back as we navigated crowded corridors. Daniel's loving glances from across the room. Two worlds colliding in slow motion. "Room 714, Sam whispered as we passed in a momentarily empty hallway. After the chairman's speech. I should have ignored him. Instead, 15 minutes later, I made excuses about powdering my nose and took the elevator to the 7th floor. The hotel room door clicked shut behind me. No pretense this time, no gradual escalation. Just Sam's hands in my hair, my back against the wall, months of tension breaking in a flood of reckless abandon. "We shouldn't," I gasped unconvincingly between kisses. "We already are," he replied, unzipping my gown with practiced ease. Afterward, fixing my appearance in the bathroom mirror, I hardly recognized myself. The carefully constructed compartments of my life were dissolving, boundaries blurring dangerously. Daniel was waiting at our table when I returned, his innocent smile a knife to my conscience. "Everything okay? You were gone a while." "Just ran into Walter, discussing the Anderson account," I lied smoothly. As Daniel took my hand, his thumb caressing my engagement ring, Sam caught my eye from across the room and raised his glass in silent acknowledgement. I was playing a dangerous game, and for the first time in my carefully orchestrated life, I wasn't certain I was winning. The anonymous letter arrived on a Tuesday, a plain white envelope among Daniel's engineering journals and utility bills. I might not have noticed it had he not gone suddenly still at the breakfast table. "What is it?" I asked, buttering my toast with practiced nonchalance. Daniel's eyes remained fixed on the single sheet of paper. "Someone thinks you're cheating on me?" The butter knife clattered from my fingers. "What? Let me see that." He hesitated before sliding the letter across the table. The message was brief, composed of letters cut from magazines like a crude ransom note. "Your fiancée isn't who you think she is. Ask her about the company gala. Ask her about Sam." "This is ridiculous," I said, heart hammering against my ribs while I forced indignation into my voice. "Some sick joke. Is it?" Daniel's eyes, those honest eyes that had always looked at me with complete trust, now contained something I'd never seen directed at me before: suspicion. "Daniel, you can't seriously." "Then tell me about Sam," he interrupted. "Tell me about the gala." I manufactured outrage, crafting a performance worthy of an award. "Sam is my colleague. We work together on accounts. That's it." I reached for his hand, which he didn't withdraw but didn't squeeze back either. "Someone's trying to cause trouble. Probably a disgruntled candidate we rejected." The explanation was plausible enough that Daniel's doubt visibly wavered. But something had shifted between us, a hairline fracture in our foundation. "I need to get to work," I said, standing to kiss his forehead. He accepted the kiss but didn't return it. "We'll talk more tonight. I love you." At the office, I frantically searched for possible sources of the letter. Security footage from the gala? A hotel employee? Someone from the office who'd seen us disappear at the same time? "You look like you've seen a ghost," Sam commented, dropping into the chair across from my desk. I slid the letter across to him, watching his expression darken as he read it. "Well, this complicates things," he said finally, his tone irritatingly calm. "Complicates things?" I hissed. "Someone is trying to destroy my engagement. My life." "Our life," he corrected, reaching for my hand. I yanked it away. "Don't. Not here." I glanced nervously at the glass walls of my office. The surveillance cameras in the corners suddenly seemed ominous rather than routine. Before Sam could respond, my assistant buzzed. "Ms. Petrova, the executive board is requesting your presence. They're in the main conference room." The timing couldn't have been worse. I straightened my blouse, applied fresh lipstick and tried to compose myself. Personal catastrophe would have to wait. The executive board rarely assembled in full unless something significant was happening. Walter sat at the head of the table, wearing the smug expression of a man about to collect on a long-term investment. "Anna, thank you for joining us," the CEO began. "We've been reviewing the performance metrics from your department, particularly your innovative recruitment strategy framework." For the next 20 minutes, they detailed the impact of my work on company growth. With each positive statistic, my anxiety about the anonymous letter temporarily receded. "Therefore," the CEO concluded, "we're offering you the position of Director of Global Talent Acquisition, effective immediately. The compensation package reflects the significance of this role." The figure they named made me momentarily dizzy. It was more than triple my current salary. "We'll be announcing this at the quarterly reception tomorrow evening," Walter added. "A celebration of your unique approach to talent management." The way his lips curled around those words reminded me of our original arrangement. He'd created me and he would never let me forget it. Back at home, Daniel was waiting with takeout and an apologetic smile. "I'm sorry about this morning," he said, pulling me into a hug. "I let some anonymous coward get in my head." Relief flooded through me. "It's okay. I understand why you were upset." "I've been thinking," he said as we ate. "We've both been stressed lately. Let's play a game to lighten things up." "A game?" Daniel pulled out a bottle of tequila and 2 shot glasses. "Truth or dare. Like college kids. To remind us how to have fun." The suggestion was so unexpected, so innocently Daniel, that I laughed. "All right. You first." 3 shots later, the game had devolved into silly dares and innocent truths. I felt myself relaxing, believing we'd moved past the morning's tension. "Truth," I said, giggling as I chose for the 4th time. Daniel's expression shifted subtly. "Compare me to your past lovers. How do I measure up?" Something about his tone sent warning signals through the alcoholic haze. "Daniel, that's just a game," he cut in. "Honesty, remember? Our relationship foundation." The last shot had loosened my tongue more than was wise. You're attentive, considerate, but not exciting, he pressed. Not like Sam. The room went silent. No more pretense of a game. What exactly are you asking, Daniel? I'm asking if you're fucking him, he replied, voice deadly calm. I'm asking if I'm a convenient fiancé while you build your career on your back. The slap happened before I could think. The crack of palm against cheek echoed in our suddenly too small kitchen. Daniel didn't flinch. He simply stood, eyes colder than I'd ever seen them. I believe I have my answer. The aftermath of our confrontation was a peculiar kind of silence. Daniel slept on the couch that night, and I remained awake in our bed, staring at the ceiling, waiting for the other shoe to drop. It never did. Instead, the next morning he calmly announced he would be attending my promotion reception that evening. I wouldn't miss such an important moment in your career, he said, voice devoid of emotion. After all, I'm the proud fiancé, aren't I? I should have recognized the dangerous glint in his eyes, should have prepared for what was coming. But my relief at the apparent ceasefire clouded my judgment. The quarterly reception was held in the company's grand atrium, all glass and chrome and strategic lighting designed to impress clients. Every executive and board member attended, along with key clients and industry figures. My promotion was the centerpiece announcement, with a champagne toast scheduled after the CEO's speech. You look stunning, Sam whispered as I adjusted my dress in the corridor outside. Director Petrova. Has a nice ring to it. Not now, I hissed, scanning the room for Daniel. He stood near the bar, engaged in what appeared to be friendly conversation with Walter. The sight sent alarm bells ringing. What could they possibly be discussing? The CEO's speech was mercifully brief, highlighting my innovative approach to talent acquisition and unique ability to secure top-tier candidates. The crowd applauded as I took my place at the podium, delivering practiced remarks about team effort and company vision. As waiters circulated with champagne for the toast, I spotted Daniel making his way toward the stage. He caught my eye and raised his glass in a mock salute. Something in his expression made my blood run cold. If I could add something, Daniel's voice cut through the polite applause as I concluded my speech. He climbed the steps to the podium before anyone could stop him. I'd like to propose a toast to my fiancée. A murmur of approval rippled through the crowd. The CEO, assuming this was a supportive gesture from a proud partner, nodded encouragingly. To Anna Petrova, Daniel continued, his voice carrying clearly through the atrium, who has indeed developed a revolutionary recruitment strategy. What my darling fiancée does is simple, really. She sleeps with potential recruits, or offers the promise of sleeping with them, to secure their talents for this company. The room went deadly silent. I stood frozen beside him, unable to move or speak. Of course, this approach has expanded recently, Daniel went on, his tone conversational as if discussing the weather. Now she's sleeping with her subordinates too. Isn't that right, Sam? All eyes turned to Sam, who had gone rigid near the refreshment table. Daniel, stop, I finally managed, reaching for his arm. He shook me off. But I wouldn't want to forget the foundation of this impressive career. Tell them, Walter, how you gave Anna her start. Tell them about your special mentorship program. Walter's face had drained of color. Several board members turned to him with questioning stares. I think, the CEO interjected, stepping forward, we should continue this discussion privately. Why? Daniel asked, his voice rising. Anna's sexual approach to business has been happening openly for years. I'm just acknowledging her true talent. The ability to lie convincingly while fucking her way to the top. Security guards moved toward the podium, but they were too slow to prevent what happened next. Sam pushed through the crowd, his face a mask of righteous indignation. How dare you, he shouted at Daniel. Your accusations are completely unfounded. Miss Petrova has been nothing but professional. For one moment I felt a surge of gratitude. Then Sam turned toward the CEO. Sir, I need to file a formal complaint. Miss Petrova has been sexually harassing me since my hiring. I've been afraid to report it because of her position of power. The room erupted in chaos. I stood abandoned at the podium as both men who claimed to care for me sacrificed me for their own protection. 3 days later, I sat across from the head of human resources and the company's legal counsel. The investigation had been swift and merciless. We've reviewed the security footage from office common areas, the lawyer stated without preamble. While not conclusive regarding physical contact, there are several instances of what could be construed as inappropriate behavior between you and Mr. Kingston. Additionally, the HR director added, 3 former recruits have come forward with allegations of quid pro quo offers during the recruitment process. Walter, I began. Mr. Walter has taken an indefinite leave of absence, the lawyer cut in. His situation is being handled separately. The severance package they offered amounted to 2 weeks' pay, a pittance compared to the director's salary I would never receive. You'll need to vacate your office by noon, the HR director concluded. We've arranged for security to escort you. That afternoon, a courier delivered a package to my apartment. Inside was my engagement ring, along with legal documents terminating our co-ownership of the apartment and various joint accounts. Daniel's lawyer had been efficient. My phone buzzed with a message from a colleague. Sam started at Henderson Group today. Executive position. Fast work. Within a week, my name had become toxic in the industry. Former contacts wouldn't return calls. Interviews mysteriously canceled at the last minute. My parents, upon hearing a sanitized version of events from Daniel's mother, sent a terse email expressing their disappointment and suggesting I not contact them until I had sorted myself out. Staring at the foreclosure notice for my apartment, I felt the panic attack building, chest tightening, vision narrowing. As I gasped for breath on the kitchen floor, I dialed emergency services with trembling fingers. The paramedics were kind, at least. They didn't ask why a woman in an expensive apartment was having a breakdown. They simply loaded me into the ambulance, my first ride to the hospital and my introduction to rock bottom. The new apartment was barely larger than my former walk-in closet. Located in a gray, nondescript building on the city's eastern edge, it offered views of a parking lot and the brick wall of an adjacent laundromat. The single window rattled when trucks passed on the nearby highway. I sat on the creaking second-hand sofa, scrolling through job listings that seemed to diminish in quality with each passing day. 3 months since the implosion of my career, and I'd been reduced to applying for entry-level positions that paid less than what I'd spent on a single business dinner in my previous life. My phone rang, one of the few numbers still in my contacts. Lily, I answered, attempting brightness I didn't feel. How are you? Lily had been my roommate during university, before my ascent in the corporate world had gradually diminished our friendship to occasional birthday texts and obligatory coffee dates. Yet she was the only person who'd reached out after news of my spectacular downfall had circulated through professional circles. I'm outside your building, she announced. Buzz me up. I come bearing wine and Thai food. 15 minutes later, we sat cross-legged on my floor, paper containers spread between us. You look like hell, Lily said bluntly, passing me a plastic cup of red wine. I laughed, a rusty sound I barely recognized. Always the diplomat. Diplomacy is overrated. She studied me with the same direct gaze I remembered from our university days. So are you wallowing or plotting revenge? Neither. Just existing. I picked at my pad thai without appetite. Trying to find a job that doesn't require references. And? I'm starting as an office manager at a dental practice next week. The pay is... I swallowed hard. It's not great. Lily nodded, neither judging nor pitying. After a moment she asked, have you considered therapy? I snorted. With what money? There are community programs, sliding scale options. My cousin runs a support group for professional women in transition. It might help. Support group? Like Alcoholics Anonymous for failed executives. I meant it as a joke, but the bitterness in my voice betrayed me. Like a place to get perspective, Lily corrected gently. You made mistakes, Anna. Big ones. But you're not the first person to self-destruct, and self-flagellation won't pay your rent. Her pragmatism was both jarring and refreshing after months of isolation. We talked late into the night, Lily updating me on mutual acquaintances while carefully avoiding mentions of Daniel or my former company. The next day, I found myself in a church basement, sitting in a circle with 7 other women whose polished exteriors couldn't quite hide their individual struggles. My cousin's professional women in transition euphemism revealed itself as exactly what I'd mockingly suggested: group therapy. I'm Anna, I introduced myself when prompted. I'm starting over. The therapist, a quietly perceptive woman named Diane, nodded encouragingly. What brings you here, Anna? I considered the sanitized version I'd prepared, then discarded it. I destroyed my career and relationship through a series of increasingly terrible choices that seemed justified at the time. The lack of shocked reactions was its own kind of comfort. These women had each hit their own version of rock bottom. The dental office job was mind-numbing but oddly grounding. Scheduling appointments and filing insurance claims required none of the morally ambiguous talents I'd cultivated in my previous career. My coworkers knew nothing of my past, treating me with casual friendliness that gradually began to heal something within me. 3 weeks after starting therapy, my phone displayed a number I didn't recognize. "Is this Anna Petrova?" a female voice asked when I answered. "Yes, who's calling?" "Maya Hayes. Daniel's sister." My heart stuttered. "Maya. How did you get my number?" "It wasn't easy," she replied dryly. "You've gone off the grid quite effectively." An uncomfortable silence stretched between us. I finally broke it. "If you're calling to tell me what a terrible person I am, you're several months too late." "I'm well aware." "Actually," Maya said, her tone softening slightly, "I wanted to check if you're okay." "Why would you care?" "Because I know what it's like to be the family villain," she said simply. "To make a mistake that costs you everyone you love." The unexpected understanding in her voice broke something in me. Before I could stop myself, I was telling her everything, not just about Daniel but about the years of compromises that led to my downfall. "I don't expect forgiveness," I concluded, surprised to find tears streaming down my face. "I don't even know if I deserve it." "Forgiveness isn't about deserving," Maya replied. "It's about moving forward." I learned that the hard way when Daniel cut me out of his life. After our conversation, I enrolled in evening classes at the community college, a certification program in social services. The irony wasn't lost on me, using my understanding of human manipulation for constructive purposes rather than exploitation. One night, I sat at my small desk, composing an email I knew I might never send. "Daniel, I don't expect you to read this. I don't expect forgiveness or understanding. I simply need to acknowledge the pain I caused you. You loved me honestly and I repaid that with deception. There are no excuses, only regret. I hope someday you find the happiness you deserve with someone worthy of your trust. Anna." I hit send before I could reconsider, then closed my laptop. For the first time in months, I slept without nightmares. 2 years passed with the steady rhythm of ordinary life, the kind I had once disdained as mundane. My certificate in crisis counseling hung in a simple frame on the wall of my small office at the Women's Support Center, where I'd been working for 18 months. The pay was modest, the hours long, but there was a satisfaction in this work I'd never found in my corporate career. "Anna, your 3 o'clock is here," called Meredith, our receptionist. I closed the file I'd been reviewing and straightened my desk, a far cry from the sleek glass monstrosity I'd once commanded. This desk was scratched wood, covered with resource pamphlets and a collection of small successes, thank you notes from women who'd found their footing after crisis. My newest client was a former marketing executive, recently fired after reporting her boss for harassment. As she spoke, I recognized the familiar contours of corporate power dynamics I once manipulated for my own benefit. Now I used that knowledge to help her navigate her rights and options. "How do you understand it so well?" she asked at the end of our session. Most counselors just nod sympathetically. "I've been on both sides," I admitted. The insights came at a high personal cost. This approach, using my fall from grace as a tool rather than a secret shame, had become my professional identity. My supervisor had even suggested I speak at an upcoming conference on workplace ethics, sharing my perspective as both perpetrator and advocate for change. The email confirming my place on the panel came with an attached attendee list. Scanning it idly, I froze when a familiar name leaped from the screen. Daniel Hayes, listed as a speaker on integrity and infrastructure projects. My finger hovered over the decline button. 2 years of healing and personal reconstruction, and still the thought of facing him made my stomach clench with anxiety. But running away would undo everything I'd worked for. I clicked accept. The conference hotel gleamed with the same corporate opulence I'd once taken for granted. I felt oddly detached from it now, like visiting a country where I'd once been a citizen but no longer belonged. My panel wasn't until the afternoon, so I found a quiet corner of the lobby to review my notes. The sound of familiar laughter pulled my attention toward the entrance. Daniel stood near the reception desk, helping a visibly pregnant woman out of her coat. Even from a distance, I could see the gold band on his finger matched hers. The woman, Beatrice, according to her conference badge, placed her hand protectively over her rounded belly as she laughed at something Daniel said. I hadn't expected the sight to hurt quite so much. Not because I still wanted him, that ship had sailed long ago, but because of the stark reminder of the future I had sabotaged with my choices. Before I could slip away unnoticed, Daniel looked up. Our eyes met across the lobby and time seemed to suspend. He said something to Beatrice, then made his way toward me. "Anna," he said simply, stopping a few feet away. "Daniel." I managed a small smile. "You look well. So do you." His assessment seemed genuine. "I heard you were speaking today. Ethics in professional relationships," Quite a change from your previous expertise. The comment could have been cutting, but his tone held no malice. Just observation. Life takes unexpected turns, I replied. Your wife is lovely. Congratulations on the baby. Thank you. His eyes softened. We're having a girl. Due in 6 weeks. An awkward silence settled between us, heavy with unspoken history. I got your email, he finally said. 2 years ago. I nodded, unsure how to respond. It helped, he added. Not right away but eventually. Helped me move forward. I'm glad, I said softly. I meant every word. Beatrice waved from across the lobby, beckoning Daniel to join her. I should go, he said. Good luck with your talk. Daniel, I called as he turned away. I'm sorry, truly. For everything. He looked back, his expression thoughtful. I know. I've forgiven you, Anna. But I'll never forget. As he walked away, I noticed Beatrice watching our interaction, her expression unreadable. She whispered something to Daniel when he rejoined her, then glanced back at me with unmistakable triumph in her eyes. That evening, scrolling through social media to distract myself from the emotional turbulence of the day, I stumbled upon an anonymous account with a single focus: posts mocking career-obsessed women who destroy themselves through ambition. The most recent post featured a thinly veiled reference to my panel at the conference. The writing style was distinctive. After spending hours counseling women subjected to emotional manipulation, I recognized the hallmarks immediately. I checked the account's creation date, 2 years ago, right when Daniel would have been most angry. Except it wasn't Daniel's style. It was too petty, too vindictive. On a hunch, I cross-referenced the account's posting times with information Maya had once shared about Beatrice, her teaching schedule, her yoga classes. The pattern matched perfectly. The revelation that Beatrice was behind both the anonymous letter to Daniel 2 years ago and the ongoing social media harassment campaign should have angered me. The old Anna would have plotted elaborate revenge, exposing Beatrice's behavior to Daniel and his family. Instead, I closed the laptop and looked at the framed certificate on my wall. My new life was built on leaving that cycle of destruction behind. Some justice was too bitter to be worth the price. Some victories came not from striking back but from walking away. As I packed for my return flight, I deleted the evidence I'd gathered. Beatrice could have her small vindictiveness. I had something more valuable, a life rebuilt on truth, not manipulation. A modest existence, yes, but one I could finally face in the mirror without flinching.